this holiday that people gather and have lots of food, specifically crabs, Maryland blue crab. They have potato salad, they have hot dogs, hamburgers. There's always associated with some type of food, but it's always also associated with a celebration. I'm sure many of us today share in that celebration and will continue to share in that celebration this weekend, possibly today. But do we, as Americans, take the time to move beyond the celebration to recognize and remember why we celebrate this day? Why do we commemorate the 4th of July? Do we make the connection with what took place for us to have this freedom, this independence? If we would take this morning, consider the fact that freedom ain't free. In other words, freedom costs. Freedom costs somebody something. The military personnel who fought for this country, for our freedom, some lost eyesight, some lost limbs, some lost their even lives. They paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Someone had to sacrifice for our freedom. As we look at our text this morning, we'll see that the true freedom is a gift that comes from God. Our background in the scripture this morning is Jesus and his disciples are celebrating the Passover. The Passover was a Jewish meal that the Jews celebrated every year. They celebrated because it was their period of freedom that represented freedom from bondage in Egypt. The Passover took place just prior to them coming out of Egypt. They also had various sorts of food that they celebrated with. They had the lamb, they had the bread, and they had bitter herbs. But God gave them specific instructions on what to do on that particular night so that the death angel would pass over them. They were to take their lamb, spotless, sacrifice the lamb, take his blood, and spread it across the doorposts of their house so that the death angel would pass over them. But also, they would take that lamb and they would cook it. They were to partake of that lamb. They were to partake of that sacrificed lamb. But it was a celebration. In the midst of darkness, it was a celebration. They're looking down the road, watch this, they're looking down the road to what God is about to do. Liberation had not come yet, but they're celebrating. Liberation had not come yet, but they're celebrating. They were to take that animal, the blood, and sprinkle it across the doorpost. Eat the lamb. It was the shank of the lamb. Then they had the unleavened bread. They was to eat the unleavened bread because at that period in time, they didn't have time to bake the bread. They were about to witness God's miracle in their life, and they were anticipating it. And so they did exactly what God said do. Don't put yeast in the bread. They didn't put yeast in the bread. We are ready to move. So much so that they had sandals on their feet while they were eating. And so they had the lamb that was spotless. They had the unleavened bread without the yeast. That means it was pure. And they had the blood across the doorpost.